Hello, I am WyreWizard. This is not my normal video format, as I am just giving a small retrospective of my observations and experiences of video games. Now, I'll have you know I have been playing video games for 35 years, give or take. I have owned many consoles and a couple now. I have a whole collection of video games, some of which I will show you in this video, and I have even donated a few games to Mark and Classic Game Room. And Mark, I thank you for lavishing those 3 games I gave you with wonderful reviews if you are watching this. Now I know one or a few of you are asking, why do you remember your first time you played video games? My answer to that, yes I do. And it is a very interesting story. Okay. It was 1978. What happened was my mother was driving me down from Orlando back to Fort Lauderdale. I was visiting my grandparents. The drive was very long and boring, and I was practically falling asleep. So then my mother wakes me up and tells me, "Darling, would you like something to eat?" I opened my eyes and saw that a diner was ahead, so I said, "Sure, Mom." So she pulled her 1975 Mustang convertible into that diner's parking lot, and we got out and into the diner. I was surprised this diner was open so late. I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock, so we go in and took a seat. There was like a few other people there. Then the manager comes over to our table and takes our order. My mom orders an omelet, coffee, and hash browns. I didn't know what I wanted, so I asked for the same. The manager looks at me and says, "Aren't you a little young to be drinking coffee?" My mom tells him he is 7, don't worry about it. So the manager nods and writes it down and then goes in the back. Now I was getting bored just sitting there, so I decided to stretch my legs and walk around. Now I saw this guy in front of this tall machine, so I decided to check it out. This guy, I would say, was 20 years old. The banner on the machine said Space Invaders. I peeked at the screen, and what I saw was very bright and colorful. I was intrigued, to say the least. The guy sees me out of the corner of his eye and says, "You like video games, kid?" I said, "Video games? Is that what this is?" And he said, "Yep, this one is called Space Invaders." I asked him, "Are there others?" "Oh yeah," he says, "lots of others." So I just stood there and watched him play. Then he checks his watch and says, "Uh-oh, I'm late." So he intentionally gets his cannon destroyed. But before he leaves, he looks at me and says, "You'll need quarters to play this. Get some from your parents. I gotta go." So he leaves the diner. I went to my mom to ask her for some quarters. So she opens her purse, pulls out a handful of quarters, and gives them to me. I went back to the machine. I'm ashamed to say it took me a minute to find where the quarters go. Hey, I was saying 7. What do you expect? So I looked at the machine itself. It was mostly blue with the name in yellow above the screen. It had 5 buttons on it. 2 for moving the cannons. This was before joysticks, mind you. 1 to fire the cannon, and the other 2 was for selecting 1 and 2 players. So the cannon needed only to be moved left or right. So I pop in a quarter and I start playing. I can still remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was 35 years ago. It felt very natural to me. My first game, I cleared 3 waves of the invaders and scored a little over 3,000 points. So I popped in another quarter and started a new game. Now I should tell you back then, video games didn't have continues. Once all of your lives are lost, it's game over and you have to start from the beginning. But a game like Space Invaders, that doesn't matter, because every stage is the same. Same enemies, same attack strategies, same counter strategies, so it was easy for me to get the hang of. Then my mom called me and said my meal was set. So I abandoned my game. I went back there, ate my omelets, hash browns, and coffee, then went back to the game and popped in another quarter. Now, right into my game was when things started to get really interesting. Two guys came into the diner and says, "We're here." I heard some of the diner patrons say, "Oh no, those streakers are back." Now these guys, they were all naked and wearing briefs on their heads. Yep, these morons were streaking. They started going around, harassing everybody, screaming. One of them even came behind me and started harassing me as I was playing. He was standing behind me, jumping, screaming, saying stuff like, "You suck, you're no good, my grandmother can play better than you," just trying to distract me from my game. I did my best to ignore him, and just play. Then right out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of them talking to my mom, and I didn't like it. I turned to him and said, "Hey, you, leave my mom alone." My mom looked at me and said, "I can take care of myself, sweetie. Just play your game." So I went back to my game, still keeping an eye on me while ignoring the moron behind me. I think I remember that guy saying to my mom, "Why don't you come home with me and I'll show you a good time? What do you say?" Well, I remember my mom taking her cigarette out of her mouth, and blowing smoke in that guy's face and saying, "That's what I say, loser." Then the manager comes out with a broom in his hand and says, "I want you two assholes out of my diner right now." And then the guy in front of my mom looks at him and says, "We better get out of here, Rick. Looks like you mean it this time." So they both run out to the diner's exit. I do remember the manager hitting one of them in the ass with the broom he was holding. So the manager tells us he called the police and asked us to stay and give eyewitness accounts. I knew I wouldn't make a good eyewitness, as most of my attention was on the game. So I played through 10 more games for 2 more hours, but got tired. So I went back to my mom and gave her the quarters I had left. We had left the diner and continued for Fort Lauderdale. That story was the beginning of a hobby I continue to enjoy to this day. Throughout those years, I have seen many video games, both consoles and arcade games, come and go. I have seen many arcade video games come and go. I've seen many console games come and go. I have seen many video game discs, cartridges, CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays come and go. I do what I can to collect and keep what I can. I had the NES and Super NES years ago, but those were discontinued and games weren't made for them anymore. So I had moved on to other consoles like PS1, PS2, PS Portable, Xbox Original, and PS3. I still have my PS2 and PS3, but I sold my Xbox years ago, so I don't have any games for it. But what I did have for it included Star Wars Battlefront, Monster Cars, Elder Scrolls Morrowind Game of the Year Edition, and Fable. Yes, Monster Cars was based on that Discovery show from years ago that was hosted by Jesse James. I tried looking for a game on based on the documentary Monster House, but I couldn't find it. I got very deep into Fable and Morrowind more than Fable. Now, my PS1 games, I have a few which I will show you now. Okay, let me turn on the light here. Alright, this is Chrono Cross, a sequel to my most beloved Super NES game of all, Chrono Trigger. I had played Chrono Trigger on my Super NES inside and out, seen all the endings, but this game took the series in a whole new direction. Instead of time periods, it was parallel dimensions. Also, the hero from Chrono Trigger, or someone who looks like them, makes occasional appearances in this game. Now, there is one time when one of the characters goes back in time. Serge, the main hero, goes back in time to rescue the heroine Kid. I often call her Shala, because that is her true identity, from a fire that is burning down Luca's orphanage. But like Chrono Trigger, this game has multiple endings. I still go back to it from time to time. Now, I still love Chrono Trigger and still do today. So I got this, Final Fantasy Chronicles. This game has Chrono Triggers on it with a few additions, as well as Final Fantasy IV, which was released as Final Fantasy II on the Super NES back in 1992. One of the additions I like in this are the cel-animated anime cutscenes in this game. I love the one that shows Marley disappearing as the time streams fall out of alignment. Now, the ending to this game that gave me the most laughs was the one where the gang goes to the throne room of Marley's father, the king, and he is suddenly hopping around the throne room in ways that a human shouldn't do. So we are taken to an old film that shows Queen Line and Frog, whom I like to call Lance, are standing together in front of the minister. They're getting married. Then the camera scrolls down to show Marley, who turns around and screams, "No!" at the top of her lungs. I don't remember how I got this ending, so I will have to go through my box of books and for my Chrono Trigger Player's Guide, published by Nintendo, and see if it has the info. Now this is Brave Fencer Musashi. This is an amazing little platform game published by Squaresoft before they merged with Enix. The whole reason I got this game was because I enjoyed it when I rented it. It was an amusing little game with some good voice acting, good music. You play as a little fencer samurai named Musashi. He is suddenly taken from his home in Japan and taken to the land of a kingdom called All You Can Eat. That's spelled ALLCANEET. They are in a war with an enemy called the Thirst Quencher Empire. Now, the story on this game, on the surface, looks like something out of a children's storybook. But if you look deeper, you see that it's more complicated than that. The Thirst Quencher has attacked All You Can Eat by scattering castle officials and trapping them in force fields. Fortunately, Musashi has a means to break the force field and free each official, the heavy sword Lumina, which he acquires on his very first mission in the game. Now, Musashi himself has many impressive abilities, like absorbing skills from normal enemies with his main sword fusion, climbing certain walls, picking enemies up and throwing them. He gets tired after a few minutes, but he can sleep virtually anywhere to recover his stamina. And this game runs in real time, so there are day and night cycles. Musashi can also increase his life bar by finding longevity berries, which are obtained by finding these animals called minku, which are like sheep with floppy dog ears. What you have to do is pick them up and toss them. You don't kill them. They will drop the longevity berry if you do, and all you have to do is pick them up. To find minku, you just have to look around in the wilds for something that looks like a pinkish berry. When Musashi examines it, he says aloud, "Looks like animal dung." So what you do next is move away from that area and wait or sleep till nightfall. I have to warn you that catching minku is tricky, pretty tricky, but because they can run. No, they don't run out the screen, although rarely, but they do run around the screen very quickly, so you have to keep up with them. Now, aside from Musashi, this game has quite a few interesting characters, like Princess Filet, who rules all you can eat and has summoned Musashi to save our kingdom. Stuart Ribson, who's the guy in the castle Musashi talks to most. All the knights who teaches Musashi techniques when they are rescued. The minstrels of Hume, when they are rescued, add to the background music of the castle, and many others. Now, this is Parasite Eve. This is a platform RPG near and dear to my heart because it's one of the few Squaresoft games that take place on Earth. The main heroine in this game is Aya Bray, a mostly quiet young New York detective who takes her work very seriously. The story in this is about a strange plague that is taking over most of New York and is about to spread to the world. Most of the people spontaneously combust, some even mutate and turn into strange creatures, and even most of the animals like rats, dogs, cats, and birds. Then Melissa Pierce, an actress on stage, suddenly starts behaving strangely as the stage actors around her spontaneously combust. So Aya chases her, okay, to the backstage while still in her evening gown. She was on a date when that all started. She has no weapon and she has no armor and her only weapon is her sidearm. She fights mutated creatures in the dressing room and sewers when she follows Melissa. In the sewers, she fights a mutated crocodile before catching up with Melissa in another part of the theater. Melissa is sitting at a piano playing a somber melody. Aya comes in and orders her to surrender. Then Melissa starts mutating. Her hands turn into claws which destroy the piano keys. Her head enlarges a little, and her legs disappear to be replaced by a black-gray tail that causes her to float. The alien personality inside of her reveals herself as Eve, and a fight breaks out. But later in the game, the source of that plague is revealed. Now, I have played this game's sequel, Parasite Eve 2, but I have yet to add that game to my collection. I have also heard about a third Parasite Eve game called on the Japanese PSP, which I believe is which I believe is a first-person shooter. I have heard no other news about that, but I do hope it becomes available on the PlayStation Network. Now, this is Star Ocean, the second story. I play this game whenever I can, but I have never seen any of its endings. Excuse me. I do know there is a Star Ocean: The Last Hope on the PS3. I do plan on getting that. Now this, Final Fantasy Tactics. This game is in the same genre as the two of the games I donated to Classic Game Rooms, both of which were reviewed there, Vandal Hearts and Vandal Hearts 2. I do have Vandal Hearts Flames of Judgment, but I can't show that since it is downloaded to my PS3's hard drive. Final Fantasy Tactics is a turn-based, tactical-style RPG with a very deep and involving story. It is told by an historian named Aslazam, who tells the story of a hidden hero in the conflict called the Lion War. It is a civil war in the country of Ivalis, whose country's rule, it is the civil war of the country of Ivalis, whose ruler has died and its rulership has become contested by two people. One is Prince Lard, the White Lion, and the other is Prince Gultana, the Black Lion. The main character of this game is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Ramza Beov, the son of a family of high knights. His father was a paragon in the 50-year war which preceded the Lion War. Ramza himself falls out of favor after destroying a demon that was a church official, and the church branded him a heretic. So Ramza helps the war in secretive ways that the church does all it can to suppress information on this. They do this to keep the church's images favorable to the people of Ivalis. Now, this next game I know will give many of you guys hard-ons, and here it is, Final Fantasy VII. I remember the commercials for this game. They said it couldn't be done in a major motion picture. They were right. I played this game all the way through just once. And what I didn't like about it was the fact that Aeris was murdered by the Sephiroth. But the rest of the game was okay to me. Nothing spectacular. Now this is my most favorite Final Fantasy game of all. Final Fantasy VIII. Why is this game my favorite? Well, the main character for Ron, Squall Leonhardt, he reminds me of myself in my 20s. I won't get into that. Another is the fact that magic doesn't rely on mana. You collect spells from enemies and draw points, and you can use these spells a number of times because they are numbered. You can carry up to 100 of each. But you can only carry so many, okay, because there are about 8 pages, and each page holds about 4, I think. So it's about a total of, oh, my math's not good right now. Another, you can, but you can also link spells to certain areas of your character's stats. For instance, linking 100 region spells to your HP can increase it to 9,999. Now, this is one thing the Final Fantasy series is known for, something I call the 4 nines bug. For some reason, stats and damages can't go above 1 short of 10,000. But there is a guardian force on this game that can damage creatures a little above that limit. This game has 4 discs, which is very impressive for a PS1. Now, the next one is Final Fantasy IX. I got this game a few years ago, but it doesn't stand out much to me. The reason for that is that all the characters in it look like cartoon characters. The main character is named Zidane Treble. I made a Yahoo ID inspired by this guy called Thief Masters Zidane. That's THIEF underscore MASTER underscore ZIDANE. Another character is called Adalbert Steiner, the leader of the Pluto Knights. Zidane often calls him Sir Rustalot, so there is a bit of slapstick comedy in this game. My favorite part in this game is when Steiner and Beatrice are fighting off monsters invading the town. I love the background music in this part. Now, I have played Final Fantasy X on the PS2, but I don't have that game since it was from my brother's. But I do have this, Final Fantasy XII on the PS3. What I like most about this game is Square Enix finally removed those damn annoying random battles that you can't avoid. You can see enemies and choose either to go around them or engage them in battle. I had beat this game and thought it was so good, so it was my favorite second favorite Final Fantasy game. Alright. Now, moving away from the Final Fantasy series, I have this, Xenogears, a truly amazing RPG on the PS1, and my most favorite PS1 game of all. I love the deep story in this game. You can fight in two ways, either with your characters on the ground, or your characters in these mechs called gears. The gear battles are rendered in superb polygonal graphics. The story of this game is rich and deep. Now, I know Xenogears is episode 5 of this series, so I got these games on my PS2. Xenosaga, episode 1, Der WyreWizard. Xenosaga, episode 2, Hen Sweet vom Gut und Bus, and Xenosaga, episode 3, also Sprach Zarathustra. The subtitles of these games are in German, but I've never bothered to check their translation. I have beat episodes 1 and 2, but not episode 3. I was waiting for episode 4 of the Xenosaga series until I heard the news that Nintendo had freaking bought out Monolith Soft. Thank you, Nintendo. Ugh. Now, the next game I know is deep in the hearts of many, and it's this, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. To say I love this game would be a gross understatement. I love the Castlevania series of horror video games, much better than the Resident Evil and Bioshock series, because it's much more dark, grim, and gothic. The game is basically a father versus son battle. You play the son, Alucard F. Tate, that's trying to prevent the resurrection of his father, Dracula. This is a very long and complex game. So to follow this game, I got this game on my PS2, Castlevania Lament of Innocence. This is a fully 3D game that pulls it off very well. In the story, you play as Leon Belmont. The story explains the origin of the battle between Dracula and the Belmont clan. Dracula appears as a human tactician named Matthias Kronfeast. The main vampire in the story is named Walter, who rules a castle in the forest called Eternal Night. The next game is a different genre. It's called R-Types. It's a compilation of the game R-Type and the arcade games R-Type and R-Type 2. I found R-Type years ago and enjoy it a lot. I especially love the intro of this game as it plays cinematically parts of the original R-Type in full 3D. I don't have this to show, but if you'd like to see it, just search for on YouTube's R-Types OP intro by S333S3. I have put a link to that in the description. The next game in the same series is called R-Types Final on the PS2. This game has all the R9 series of ships, some of which appeared in other R-Type games and many which haven't. I love the time travel stage in this game where you are traveling forward in time from the past, seeing the history of Earth's conflict with the Bido. I know this isn't the last game in the R-Type series. Another game followed this is called R-Type Command for the PSP. This is Gradius 5, a very cool side-scrolling spaceship shooter with an upgrade system similar to that of the arcade game Psychonix Oscar. I have played many of this game's prequels, including Gradius and Life Force on the NES, Gradius 2 on the Famicom, Gradius 3 on the Super NES and arcade, and Gradius 4 Fukasu on the arcade. I sure hope Konami plans another Gradius game. I never want this series to end. Switching genres. Whoops. Excuse me. Switching genres, I have this. Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life Special Edition. Now, I have played many games in the Harvest Moon series of farming simulators. You not only have to grow crops and raise livestock, but you also have to take part in town festivals and celebrations and try to get yourself a wife. Unless you are playing Harvest Moon More Friends of Mineral Town, then you have to find yourself a husband. But unlike most of the previous Harvest Moon games, this one adds a few modern twists, like a automated milking machine to milk your cows, 4 different varieties of cows and bulls to choose from, sheep, chickens, a goat, and duck, also a dog and cat, okay, and machines for making cheese and butter, and well, never mind. Now, I like the Harvest Moon games because they remind me of the simplistic life of farmers. I sure hope Natsumi makes a Harvest Moon game on the PS3. Switching genres again, I have this. Gran Turismo 4. I have played the original Gran Turismo 2, on PS1 and Gran Turismo 3 on PS2. And I also have Gran Turismo 5 XL on the PS3. Yes, auto racing games are one of my favorite genres, and Gran Turismo series takes them in depths the way no other series can. I also have 3 other race games for what? Oh my goodness! Excuse me. This is Gran Turismo 5. Excuse me. Man, hi. Now, I also have three other racing games. Okay. Let me. Sorry, I'm not following my script very well. And they are Blur. This is an auto race game that is similar to the Mario Kart series. You drive real cars and collect power-ups and weapons to disable your opponents. This game is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I have played Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and Hot Pursuit on the PS1, so I had to get this game. I love playing as cops chasing down the racers. The next game I don't enjoy at all. It's Need for Speed to Run. Now, when I first saw the descriptions for this game, I was enthralled because I love road trips and touring the country by the interstates. But when I tried this game, I was very disappointed. Your focus is mainly gaining positions of your opponent cars, which is difficult in the extreme, even on easy difficulty. You aren't looking around as much as you are focused on your opponents. I am thinking of giving this game the classic game room. So Mark, if you are watching this, please comment and say if you would like to receive this game and review it on Classic Game Room. Now I also have two games by Rockstar. They are L.A. Noire and Red Dead Redemption. I am waiting for Gran Turismo 5, which will be released in September 2013. I have also bought out a few of my PC games. They are Afterlife, a SimCity clone with a humorous twist. Build a heaven and hell for incoming souls. Wing Commander, which is a 3D space shooter, but for this one, called Prophecy, instead of fighting a Kilrathi, you are fighting some bipedal bugs looking to conquer the galaxy. Star Trek Armada, which is a real-time strategy game in the Star Trek universe. I also have Armada 2 and a few other RTS games, including StarCraft and Brood Wars, Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne, StarCraft 2 and Heart of the Swarm. Now that you have seen some of my collection, I will end it by saying this. I love video games as a hobby. I have a few other hobbies, but I won't get into those now. Video games are, in my opinion, the best form of entertainment because they combine interaction and technology. I know video games have been used to help people improve skills, improve thinking, and for medicine. If you look at the video games of today and compare it to video games of 30 years ago, you see a lot of stark differences, like better graphics and audio with the games of today, as well as more complex gameplay. Gone now are the bit mapping techniques used by game designers of the past. Games today are no longer designed by a single person, but by teams of individual people. So with video games from 30 years ago, think of how they will be from 30 years from now. I am WyreWizard, and I look forward to your comments. Thank you for watching.